So there we go. We are now recording. And as I said, because of the way we're doing this by remote interview, it's really easy for us to go as deep into some of these things as you want to, and then I can edit it for length for the worship service tomorrow, and then just post the unedited video for anybody who wants the longer version. So, Jessica, thanks for joining us today in worship at St. James, though this will be tomorrow. And for the benefit of those watching, you and I know each other from our time together on the executive of Voices Against Bullying, though we actually discovered that we had met each other years prior when I married your aunt and uncle who owned the Grasshopper shop on Highway 6. And so our connection goes way back, and your connection to our community goes way back as well. You are active you work in the school system, but you're active outside of that as an advocate for mental health, and with some street affected experience in your background, which I presume informs and motivates your recent work in connecting with unhoused people in the Hamilton area. So I'm wondering if you can give folks a sense of your background and what's brought you to the point that you're at now in helping street affected people in Hamilton.
Yeah, for sure. And first of all, thank you so much for having me, and hello to everybody that's watching. It's a great opportunity, I think, in this global pandemic for Zoom to be very effective and staying connected to community and just, you know, I guess connecting in all aspects. So yeah, my name is Jessica Compton. I grew up in North Bay. I'm in Hamilton for the last 20 plus years. So a bit of my story is, growing up in North Bay as a teenager, I ended up on drugs and being arrested a couple times, maybe 4 times, for what I got caught for anyway. Every time I got arrested, I was back on the streets, and it was just this pattern. And I think that, just to kind of back up my story is, yes, there was trauma, there was, diagnosis of ADHD, and just feeling very, very broken and lost and not understanding, my story or my background. Being 44 years old today, looking back and understanding all the years of therapy and all the struggles and pushing through the struggles to the best of my abilities with, some years of not so much support and then some years of support. I would have to say that I'm one of the individuals that was super blessed to be incarcerated every single time, because it gave me an opportunity to kind of, be in my head and think and go through, I would go in at 110, 115 pounds, and coming out refreshed at 130 pounds. So not only did I have a roof over my head, but I had, the opportunity to have the 3 meals and a snack and exercise and making sure that I was having the showers. So fast forwarding to, I had to wait 11 years to clear my criminal record. And, just for anybody that's watching, those, you can reach out to me and ask me more details for my story, but I wanted to, stay focused to the best of my abilities on this topic of homelessness. And, going to college and graduating from the correctional worker program to work in the jails. I never end up working for the jail system, but what I end up doing is working 15 years at a group home. And that gave me an opportunity to, utilize my life experiences with these kids to say, these are the do's and don'ts, and mentor them and parent them and nourish their mindset to, a level of like, hey, when you turn 18, there's not as many supports. And so yeah, I think, and also being in the school board and seeing, parents struggle just with incomes and, just seeing so many struggles with so many people. But being in recovery, and staying connected to community throughout the pandemic and even before the pandemic. I've always had a heart, for anybody that's willing to kind of listen and put a plan in place to change their lives. And, yeah, and that kind of brings me to what I do in the community for the last 4 years. So I go out in the community and I run some workshops. Everybody's welcome. Those workshops are more like self-care groups. There's some music and meditation and some journaling. But I also, collect in the last, since November, I've collected, items for, sorry, my dog's coming in here. And I predicted this.
It's okay.
I predicted.
You
So yeah, so before the pandemic, I was going to a place called Small Scale Farms out in Niagara. They were giving some grocery bags to the community. And one of the things I did that was super exciting is any kind of volunteer hours that I'd put in at Small Scale, they would give me grocery bags of fresh produce and I would bring it to the group home. And some of the kids, they were like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's a zucchini." And, um, sorry. So
okay.
yeah,
I have a dog too. Yeah.
it's a pandemic dog, so he's very needy, like us humans, and it's okay. So yeah, I would put in the hours. I would volunteer 5 hours a week. And in that 5 hours, I was also prepping food. I was doing some gardening and I would bring that food back to the group homes. And because we were on a budget, I had 6 boys and, I would teach them about volunteer work. I would teach them about the benefits of volunteering, not only for ourselves, but other people. And so, yeah, they thought it was really awesome that I would go volunteer to bring in them fruits and vegetables. And we would have, so yeah, during the pandemic, I also some musicians that went from an income of 10,000 a month to 2,000, I would bring produce to their doorstep from Small Scale Farms. So I would drive out to Niagara, fill up my vehicle as much as I could and just go and drive. There was an elderly lady that I knew that she was 87. She lost her husband throughout the pandemic. So we would just drop off every Friday, fresh produce to her door. So just reaching out to individuals, not necessarily that they were homeless, but just struggling in a financial way and keeping them well. And then recently, November of this past year, there was a friend of mine that I grew up with up here in North Bay that had moved to Hamilton, and his cousin had reached out to me saying that he was struggling, he was on the streets, and he needs some support, and if there's anything I could do. I gave him a list of resources that I know in Hamilton of shelters, safe injection sites, and just places that would give blankets, anything. And as we know it, everybody's struggling financially. So I sat there and I was like, how can I help? So I created a Facebook group and I just threw it out there. People that I knew, if they wanted to give a blanket, and my good friend, Holly Smith, I'll give her a shout out. She's a musician. She said, "Why don't you use my garage?" And I was like, "That's awesome. I can use your garage. I'll collect donations." So people started dropping stuff off at my place. I'd bring the stuff to the garage and I would organize it and put together comfort bags. And I called them comfort bags because, I didn't want to call them a blessing bag and just at Christmas. People call them blessing bags because it's Christmas. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to stop at Christmas. I want to make these Ziploc bags. And, some people gave cash donations where I went grocery shopping the same day that I would make these bags. I put some eggs in there, cheese strings, yogurts, anything like that. And I made about 35 big freezer bags, put them in my vehicle, and I would literally drive around with a friend and we would go and look for people that looked like they were struggling. And there was a moment, where I had some blankets and some items in my vehicle. And I went to work one day and there was an individual in the storefront, and I didn't even know if she was alive, but I went in my vehicle and I had some blankets and some comfort food, and I went up and I woke her up. I said, "Excuse me, miss." I said, "I have some items for you. And she goes, oh my goodness. She goes, I'm so sorry. It was raining last night and I needed, a place to kind of go under. And so I said, well, if you can move to the next storefront, I said, because they're not open this weekend. I said, we can get you settled. And so it took her a good 10 minutes. She's about 30 years old. It took her 10 minutes. And there was a crack pipe that had fell out of her pocket. And you could see that she had an accident, number two, not to be detailed, but these are the situations that, so and I'm trying to be kind of a compassionate at the same time to, just be very kind. And so it took her a good 10 minutes to get up, and I moved her to the other side, and I gave her a couple blankets, and I gave her some food, and somebody had donated a bunch of big chocolate bars, and I set her up nice, even just items like that are soft, because, with dental, a lot of individuals that are on the streets, they don't have proper dental. So anything that's like applesauce, soft granola bars, I put that bag together. But she almost was in tears that I had kind of tucked her in with a blanket and got her set up. And, yeah, I came out 3 hours later and gave her a water bottle, and I just checked in. I said, what's your first name? And she told me her name. And even when I had asked her that was, another, it looked like she was tearing up a little bit. But, so, going out in the community and even just, handing out bags, there's moments where, this one lady, she had her face like really beaten up, and I don't think she went and got medical attention, but she received the bag. And the approach going up to people is interesting because with all the, I'm not going to get into the media and shelters and police and cutting up the tents and this and that, but as we understand, what's actually going on out there. Somebody who works full-time and part-time, I work 12 hours a day, Monday to Friday. And the cost of living with rent, or being on, anybody that's on ODSP, or if it's, social assistance, $550 is not a lot of money. I don't even think nowadays you can even rent a room, to room and board for that. So these individuals, we talk about the hope of these people, and then we get into the mental health and the addictions. Again, I'm an individual that was super blessed, and I don't think that the correctional system, they may lay charges on these people, but I don't think that there's a lot of room in the shelters or in any kind of incarceration. It's very limited. So and it costs a lot of money, for somebody to be incarcerated, and the shelters, right? But the shelters, with the scheduling, okay, you're allowed to be in there at this time, and then you got to go out and look for a job, or you got to be out at this time. And then it's a very strict schedule. I know many individuals that work at shelters, and again, it comes down to funding and supports. But also, if you're an individual that's been on the street for, 20 years, and you know how to live it, I walked up to this one guy. He's on the corner of York, and I think it's Hess, around downtown, but he's lived there for a couple of years. And I actually went to go visit him, and I brought him a basket, and I had some items in it. And he said, no, I don't need any more. And I was like, okay, well, can I give you a gift card? So I went to go give him a gift card, and I said, and he thanked me so much. He goes, why do you want to help me? And I said, oh, just to make a difference. There's some good humans out there. And he lives under a tarp. So he actually dug a hole and has a tarp so that the police or anybody else can't cut his tent or knock it down. So he's literally, and I'm like, this guy's living like a groundhog. Like he, and then, and the look of their hands, it tells a story for sure. And, church storefronts, or storefronts, or any kind of front of any kind of building, these people are, they're doing shift work. So if they do have a tent set up, there's 3 people, say, living in this tent, and there's 3 others standing in front of this tent to guard it, and then they take turns. Or a lot of them will sleep during the day and stay up during the night for safety, or whatever that is. But it is a mess out there, and I think it's even more of a mess now, because it was like, oh, I have 35 bags, I'm going to drive around. And when you drive around looking for people that are struggling, it's a very sad world. But I look at it as this, is that I almost can't allow myself to get sad. I have to just do the work and make that difference. And whatever donations come to me, if it's clothing, blankets, hats, mitts, I keep in my vehicle. So I'm like mobile. So even when we pull up, we're going to Walmart and we see somebody coming up, and they're holding a sign up. not necessarily that we have to give them cash, but even if we have a couple little bags in our vehicles of granola bars or even a blanket, and then it's passing them the items that we have in the vehicle. It doesn't always have to be, cash. I think that items. So I also go to a couple different tent cities.
Mhm.
It's a mess. They're not organized. They're not, it's almost like injections that are not safe. Like there's needles, it's a mess and it's sad. So we go out to I have two other individuals that go with me. I actually have a cell phone number that I text, the person that's, not, I guess, in charge. I guess you could say in charge. They have generators. There's some that are out in the bush that, I go at a certain time. They trust me, and I've been doing that since November. And I asked them, I'm like, what do you need? And there's people that have donated like all year round tents that will survive the winter. And there's people that are taking turns, to go and collect money for gas to fill the generator. And it's, I even asked them, I said, how much does it cost? So that there's, different tent cities that have, it's like a village and they're living off the land. And, but there's also the addiction part and there's the mental health, right? So that's kind of like my story and the outreach. And just I count my blessings every day that, oh my gosh, I made it and I made it this far. And to stay in recovery is to help other people. And I think volunteer work is, when we're sitting in our homes, we can not necessarily just anything that we're not using. If it's an old can opener,
Yeah.
if it's, you got canned goods that have been sitting there, anything helps, right?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I know you've hinted at some bigger issues here that we could talk for hours on in terms of issues like how the city through the police department is responding to unhoused people in Hamilton in unhelpful and hurtful ways, and our general sociological approach to issues of mental health and addiction, by just casting those people out on the street to fend for themselves. Those are huge issues that are beyond what we can uh, uh, resolve or respond to today, that are worth kind of hanging on a hook for the future, because tackling the symptoms doesn't make the problem go away. But right now, and when I say now, I mean like this weekend even, we're seeing a new crisis arising, that's going to be with us for the next few weeks. That's quite acute, and I wonder if you could give people a sense of what it's like living on the street in an unhoused situation during the winter time in Hamilton compared to the summertime. What an average day is like for a person who is unhoused, who has to endure Southern Ontario urban life when it's minus 18 degrees.
Yeah, so I technically, so I was trying to get somebody from a shelter to come on here with me,
Mhm.
and even just in aspects of, not having enough room or, you know, um, so I can't fully, I can express my experience being a teenager on the streets in winter and, handing out resumes from store to store. But I also worked at a restaurant in the last 3 months, and the amount of individuals coming in wanting to use the washroom
Mhm.
and or trying to get warm. Um, so that alone, just and even just speaking with other individuals that work at the shelters, they're full of anger
Mhm.
to what's happening out there. But um, so yeah, I would kind of have to bounce this back because I haven't really, went out to the actual shelters or individuals that are sleeping in the cold. I see it. So
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine sleeping in the cold, right? And if there's individuals that have been doing this for 20 years, or if I can backtrack to the story of the individual that was on drugs, that numbs it a bit. But there's definitely a lot of abandoned places, warehouses. I myself, even with photography, I go out to some abandoned places, and there's people living in these abandoned places. There's people that that are living in a car. There's people that so yeah, they're definitely using their resources, but
Mhm.
I couldn't even imagine, like, I can't fully answer this today's date of
Mhm.
myself being on the streets. I don't even know how they're doing it. So I fully can't answer this.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think we can. I think we can imagine just stepping outside for a few minutes, what it must be like to try to live a whole night in nothing more than a nylon tent with maybe a sleeping bag or a couple of blankets to get you through the night. Yeah, well, no, I don't think I could imagine, but I think that characterizes it.
I've had from different tent cities and cell phone numbers and people contacting me and saying, "Can you co-sign? There's two of us here with ODSP. We need to keep warm for the winter to survive."
Yeah.
And I, I'm not in a position to do that. But
Hmm.
again, if you've got four people with an income of $600 to $700, and a landlord is looking at these individuals, four people in a one bedroom, it's not allowed, right?
That's
So when
right.
we're looking at price gouging, I rented a one bedroom apartment for 900. Well, now they're 1,500. So
Mhm.
I don't know, even with room and board, people are renting out rooms for $900, or there's ads that are like, share a room with me, share a bedroom with me for 450, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm like, to sleep in another. So I think this is what it's coming down to. And there's other cities that are building, you know, um, not tiny homes, but like little sheds that are have a room, and it's a smaller community, so that they can have that shelter, or even a sense of um, like home, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You've given a sense already of what you've been doing to try to help, and I will certainly put a link in the description below for people who want to connect with your organization, Tree of Stars, and the rest of the work that you do. We'll also put a link to other Hamilton resources supporting street affected people, so people can link to that, or can access that link below. Um, is there anything that a group of eager volunteers who want to help but aren't sure where to start helping? Is there anything you could say that might be helpful guidance to them, in terms of things they could do to begin to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I have a couple people that reach out to me that want to be a part of handing out those bags, and if that takes an hour or 2 hours, and collecting donations from friends or family. And when I talk about donations, the things that are needed right now, hats, mitts, scarves. I've kind of like pushed the clothing to drop off at shelters, because you can go into the shelters and get, I just don't have that space, but
Mhm.
blankets, if I could say blankets 3 times, because,
Blankets,
um
blankets, blankets. There.
yeah. There's also, like, from the dollar store, there's warmers that you can do, put inside the mitts. And I think, hygiene products, if it's, deodorant, things like that. I think backpacks, even if there's old backpacks, people want to collect. You could easily run this, your own little group of Facebook friends, and once a month collect items, and then go do it once a month. I think that there's two things here to talk about if you are going to go out and make that difference: is buddy up with somebody, and also the burnout of wanting to do all this. So
Mhm.
narrow it down so that like I said, I don't take clothing donations because I don't have closets in a space. But if you want to help in a mobile way, collecting blankets and whatnot, put it in your vehicle. And even if you're driving around and you have, you know, just making that small little difference with, if you know that there's somebody at the corner of, York or something, just and again, safety is number one here, and burnout is the second piece. But to know that we are making a difference, by just making that difference. We're not fixing the whole world, but making these little snippets of help. So if you go and help four people, or if you go help one person, I know there's a gentleman I know, he's on ODSP, and he makes chili once a week, and he goes and feeds this one person that's at the corner. And he tells me about it all the time. And you know what? This individual is now going to a recovery treatment.
Hmm.
So that's just an example of these small little things. You want to make a pot of chili and go to the dollar store and make some small containers, and then go hand out to five people safely. But collecting like hats, mitts, and things like that, is you could do that out of a garage, out of a room, and keeping things safe. I know there's bed bugs and all these things out there, so keeping it in your vehicle, not bringing those items in the house, or just trusting the person that you're collecting from, right?
Hmm. Excellent. That's some good and helpful advice. Anything further that you want to add that you can think of that we should have covered that we haven't, or have we covered everything that you feel is helpful for today?
Yeah, I have to do a shout out to all the resources out there that are surviving to keep their
Yeah.
spaces open, to keep a place like Grenfell Ministries. They hand out cell phones, used cell phones. They put resources on that phone and they hand it out to individuals on the streets. So that's super cool that they've done. So I think the list of resources is super helpful. Even with me going to tent cities, handing them a list of resources and saying, if it gets too cold, these, or if you want supports for mental health or addictions, like anything like that, is to reach out, right?
Yeah.
I think them feeling like they're a burden is a huge piece, right? And then there's those feelings of shame and guilt. And so yeah, it's just a world of sadness, but with us going and making that difference, that there is super awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Jessica, for your time. I really appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and
And
and thank you for the blessing of all that you do in the community to support children and youth, to support people struggling with mental health issues, and to support unhoused people on the street.
yeah, my great recovery piece. Anybody that's struggling out there too, that may be listening to this, that's struggling with any sort of like mental health addictions, and you are in that position where you have a home and you have supports. But I think volunteer work is super important to count our own blessings on what we have, if it's friends, family,
Yeah,
shelter, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm privileged to be able to call you friend. You're an inspiring person, and I'm glad that God has brought you into my life. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you. Well, thanks for
yeah,
our friendship.
yeah. Thanks for your time today.
Awesome.
I'm gonna stop the recording now.